it all starts with, what's happening in our brain. And, mate, the psychology of a builder, it's just, guys, you've got to start thinking different. I think that's what it comes down to, especially when we're talking about implementing a lean approach. You are not going to do it because I told you to do it. You're going to do it because you understand the value that it brings you in your business and your lifestyle if you do implement it. And see, that is it. That's why I sit here and I just speak freely, because I'm not trying to change your mind, because nothing I can say can. What I can do is present a different way of thinking, and then it's up to you to either embrace that and implement that and execute off the back of that or not. How old are you going to be before you start to experience life like you want it? I want to tell you right now, whether you like it or not, there is a better way to do business. Hi everyone, welcome to the Business for Builders podcast. My name's Max, I'm your host. I am the Pres and CEO here at Smithies in Canada, and I'm the ambitious founder of EliteBusinessAdvisory.com. I do customized coaching for contractors, and I love that to bits. Good to have you along for the ride. If this is your first time checking us out, welcome. I hope you get something out of the show. If you've been around with me for oodles of episodes, I appreciate you doing that. And I do appreciate your feedback in that regard as well. Always giving me a bit of a bump and a nudge to make sure that I'm staying on the straight and narrow. Okay, one of these drops every week, so like and subscribe. Get across to Business for Builders VIP private group there. And answer the 3 questions. If you're a good steward, I will let you in. Right, we're all about moving the needle in a positive direction. And, 50% of builders go broke in the first 5 years. There's a few other statistics getting around that maybe it's worse than that. Obviously, there's a stat, that backs up that. 10 years, it's about, 50% of what's left over also go out the back door. So after 10 years, I think that would be 25% are left. I think that's how it would work, 50 and then half. Yeah. Okay, so don't be in that crowd. And it's like, right, what have I got to do? So, I was banging on last week about cash flow, managing your fixed expenses and your variable expenses and making sure you've got a little bit of a buffer fund. And it kind of segues in, because I think this month, the theme for this month was all about cash flow and profit. And so, we're going to round out February with just chatting about managing your overheads. So, part of forecasting cash flow was about what are our fixed expenses, what are our variables, and how do we make allowances for that? How do we calculate that? Well, we use historical data. We might go over the last couple of years for the next quarter and go, well, over the last 3 years at this quarter in the year, we spent X, Y, Z. So today I'm going to talk to you about managing the overhead. And again, not particularly sexy, but it's something that I just need to share with you, and you can throw it out if you like. This whole thing's a buffet. If it's worth something to you, tuck it under your arm and, roll it out in your business. But a lot of it, I think, sometimes are new fundamentals or principles that I introduce. And, it's the 6 inches between our ears that really limit our potential, because we think our opinion matters, and it really doesn't matter. It's just, this whole world is about, you learning and understanding and implementing and trial and error and, going through the failure phase and, really figuring out where you went wrong and trying to figure out a better way to go forward. So today we're going to chat about managing overhead. We're going to talk about analyzing and trimming your overhead. We're going to talk about streamlining your overhead, and we're going to talk about implementing a lean approach. Okay, so that really, if you're saying, okay, what am I going to do about my overhead? Okay, so we're going to analyze it, and we're going to trim the unnecessary overheads. We're going to streamline. We're going to talk about streamlining your administrative costs. And we're going to look at implementing the lean approach. And if you don't know what that is, we're going to quickly make reference to a book about that. Okay, so point number 1, analyze and trim the unnecessary overhead expenses. So basically start by reviewing or auditing all of your overhead costs, including your office supplies, subscriptions, utilities, all of the stuff that goes along. And that should be in your operational expenses inside of your accounting software. Not super difficult. Within about 3 clicks, you can be logged in. You can be looking at your operating expenses for the last 12 months or whatever the case may be. And just start looking at areas where you can reduce your cost without compromising your operations. So In that regard, you might be able to switch to more cost-effective software tools. You might look, sometimes I've got software and subscriptions that I'm like, I don't even use it, haven't done for 6 months, and yet it's still in there. So that's the kind of thing you want to get to. I got two companies with credit cards in both that actually that are expiring this month. That is a great way to jettison unnecessary, because everyone starts hitting you up about, oh, your card's due to expire. And I'm like, oh, good. I didn't want you anyway. So I ain't going to renew that. So it's, this is where we get so busy as builders and general contractors. We just don't have time to sit down and do the analysis. And I'm telling you, it's why there is such a thing as a CFO, a chief financial officer. That is all they do. And it's why there is a C-suite for all of the aspects within the business. Because it's just when your business is greater or big enough, it get large enough, one human can't manage. There's too much business for one guy or gal. So regularly audit your expenses to identify areas of waste, such as underutilized equipment or excess office space. I know I've got a buddy of mine who's a real estate agent. He jumped into a franchise, didn't want to go and get into an office. He said, have you got some space? And I literally moved my podcast from that side of the wall to this side of the wall, after we took it home for a second and brought it back here. So, for me, that to me is I was happy to give that space up and move the podcast here. No harm, no foul, and I've created some income. So not only have I, looked at that office space, I've actually created some income out the back of that as well. So downsizing and shifting resource, that's a good way to trim any of that unnecessary overhead. So, I think we want to, as business owners, I hesitate to say this, but you want to kind of gamify, like every month I am looking to cut something, because every month I might bring something on as well, right? So it's not just a one-way street. I might bring on a piece of software that's going to give me some leverage, or that maybe is more cost-effective than the other one, but there's something over here that can also, we don't use that anymore. It's past its use-by date as far as the company's concerned, and we move on. So ensure that you're just, looking at it, and again, I think there's a lot of stuff we make recommendations. We go, you should do this, you should do that, and the list is just significant. And no sooner have I mentioned it to you, you're just like, oh, it's just another thing I've got to do, and it never gets documented. And so maybe the first part of the audit is really figuring out what your obligations are if your goal is to run a business that has order. If it's an orderly business, it will be systemized, and the more systemized it is, the more control you'll have. Now that will have its limitations. Like there'll be a ceiling to the amount of sales and how much business revenue and how much operation you can run by yourself. But I think once you get to that point, you'll be running more efficiently, you'll be able to build bank up, and you'll be able to then put people in position with systems, and you'll be able to buy yourself back maybe 10, 15 hours a week, something along those lines. So make sure that's part of your thought process when you are analysing and trimming your unnecessary overheads. Right. Streamline administrative costs. I was chatting with who was I chatting with yesterday? And they were making reference to another builder in this town, and he gave me insight and said, oh, that building company doesn't have any office staff anymore. And we're like, what? And so what's happened is I think they've streamlined their administrative costs because their overheads all of a sudden were getting out of control. So, so it sounds like some heads have rolled, and that's what happens. And the other side of that story is there's some developing going on, and we think there's some overextension there, and that's what happens. You've got to be able to pay the bills. And so now I would say, if I could see into that business, I would say that there is some economic constraints and some financial challenges which are now placing demand and back pressure on that business operator. And I'm telling you, if it can happen to that guy, it can happen to any of us. So watch your back, right? So administrative tasks can often account for a significant portion of our overhead costs. Simplify the processes, things like invoicing and bookkeeping, and even project management, digital tools. I've hesitated to mention this, and I can't remember. I think it's probably a good time. And I'll tell you what, next month I'm going to be talking about project costing and estimating. So it's going to be super relevant. So if you've stuck with me this long, and you've had a couple of my clients were using a job management software by the name of JobTread. Okay, JobTread.com. I've had one brief conversation with the founder of JobTread. He's out of Texas, Mr. Eric Fortenberry. Exchanged a few emails with him. He runs a podcast called Builder Stories, and I like the guy, and I like the software. At this point, now shit can change, obviously, but I like, and the beautiful thing about it is, up until this point, I had franchised operators and the rest of the organization in Smith & Sons using a piece of software, and I never actually got real-time experience on the down and dirty and the granular parts of any of the softwares, really. I just kind of knew the macro and the headline view, and this is what you do. But, having running a building company now of our own forces me into communicating with clients that are out of state or out of province, utilizing all aspects of that software. I've got clients that are using it. We're jamming around some of those features. It's got a great, apparently, I've not used this yet, but it's got a graphic takeoff tool, which is awesome. I know that BuildExact had one of those, and that was actually one of the benefits to having BuildExact. But it sounds like JobTread has got their shit together, and they've got this takeoff tool. But they are very progressive. Again, people that want to come on board with me and get some business coaching or join the franchise group, mate, there's 227 podcasts this one, and you can go back and just hear my whole story for the last, over 4 years, 4.5 years of me banging on about the building game. And so, I love it when a guy like Eric goes and does, a podcast where he's talking to a lot of his JobTread clients. And we have talked about, he'll show up on my show and I'll show up in his show, and we'll do that. And one day we will do that. Just not in the next couple of months, but the option is there. And so, that piece of software I think is priced right. It's got great features. It's got great support. I'm getting feedback from a lot of different clients. There is a Facebook group, and everyone is super positive in that group as well for the most part. But I'm dealing with clients that are using it every day, and we're exchanging templates, and this is what I do for the email template, and this is what I do for a proposal template. And so there's a lot of, good discussion and collaboration around maximizing the return. So, that's something that I believe I use, and it gives me a lot of, now you've got to be good in utilizing and execution. So I know that a couple of my clients had a bit of a head start on how to use JobTread, but it only took me a couple of months to not just catch them up, but overtake them, because I've got my bum in the seat in the office. I don't have to go to a building site and build stuff and put a bag on, and bash shit. So I've got a competitive advantage in that regard, but then because they're my clients, they automatically benefit from my time invested. So there's a leveraging tool. There's something, I even had a chat with one of my clients on Friday. It was an impromptu, and I opened the door to these guys getting a hold of me between our meetings week to week. It doesn't matter whether you're in Australia, New Zealand, London, the States or Canada, you can just WhatsApp. Just check the time zones and hit me with a message. Hey, Max, can we have a chat? Can you give me a call? I'll be like, yep. And I said to this guy, just give me 30 minutes and I'll call you. And, we were just jamming around, because this is the challenge for business coaches. It's not just one way does it for everyone, because with the conversation that we had was really positive, because he knew that I had an approach, and he is just looking into JobTread right now. And he's like, I'm just trying to get my head around how you use it. So what I'm actually doing and it was a decent chat, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes, and I was on the road, so it was really convenient. And we were just talking about how I put it together. Now, I am not the master of software. I'm not the master of systems, but I've got a way that I go out into the, marketplace and execute. And so what's good is they can look at that and just go buffet. Oh, yeah, I like that. Or I don't like any of that, or I like some of it, whatever. But it's that collaboration, that conversation is what brings clarity. Collaboration, conversation brings clarity, because there's questions that get asked, and there's conversation and, around that collaborative approach. So I don't just say to these guys, oh, do it this way because I do it. That doesn't wash, right? I will say, look, this is what I do, and this is why I do it, and this is this is the outcome, this is the result that I get. And that is important. Next month, we're talking about project costing and estimating, and we're going to lean hard probably on looking into a bit of JobTread. I would encourage you. Now, I want you to, if you have got any kind of inkling about going this way, Dom, we'll have to make a note. I need to put in the show notes. There is a link that Eric gave me for you guys, for all of my audience, okay? And I need you to make a note. And, you know, some of these support people, I mean, shout out to Paris. She's been really great. You know, I don't think she's Wonder Woman, but she is very consistent. And anyone that comes into my world that says, what should I do for software? I will recommend, okay, it doesn't suit everybody. You might look at it and go, that's garbage. I'm going back to Builder-Trend. I'm like, Mazel tov. Okay, at least you explored it, right? And what I want to do is I want to get anybody that goes forward, and Paul Paris might get absolutely bludgeoned to death here, but at the end of the day, because I'm dealing with Paris as a franchisor who's going to roll this into the Smith & Sons group, obviously I want all my EBA clients to have her as the customer success until she moves on, and hopefully that's not anytime soon. But because what it does is it creates efficiency, because whatever I'm bullying forward on, and I'm talking to her about some of those aspects, then her and I are on the same page. And then, of course, I've got EBA clients in there. Well, they're on the same page as well. So, you know, it's about, you know, streamlining the administrative cost, because when you get into it, and with this guy back east who's just started, we'll see. I'm interested to see what he thinks, because he is ridiculously tech savvy, off the charts, right? And I thought if this guy gives it grief, good, because if anyone can expose the shortfalls, he can. And so, but he's a different beast. Like if I talk to someone who's 20 years his senior, kind of like me, I'm not as demanding of the software, but I love to use it for client communications. I love the way I put it together. And this is what I think I'm, you know, going to talk about, maybe sales as well. I think we're going to build the sales and project costing and estimating all together next month. So I'm probably going to have to sit down and have a bit of a think about that, because we might jump on the whiteboard. I think that's what we're going to try and do for the month of March, is maybe get me out of this seat here and get me walking around with a whiteboard marker, a little bit Alex Hormozy style, and see if, you know, I can get another level of value. It just means the guys listening to the podcast, well, you're going to have to go check out the YouTube channel. But the guy, I definitely, when we start talking about streamlining administrative costs, I think I'm punching above my weight, really working out and doing and liaising and negotiating with clients. Because of that software, it actually maybe saves me half a human, or maybe a complete human, because there's tasks that I might need to get someone in administration to do that I no longer do, because I can access it and I can bounce that out quick. That's not a separate email. It's all inside of that. It's all inside that technology. And so, so that's that's the first shout out for JobTread. But look, go and check out some of the demos. Do not sign up without the link. And that way they know you've come in because of this show. And I don't actually know what that gets you, to be honest. I didn't ask Eric that. But anywho, nonetheless, go and check it out, because it will be worth your while. And make sure I'll have to actually, what I'll do is I'll send a link of this podcast to, I'll send it across to Eric, and I'll send it to Paris, and I'm like, brace for impact, because there could be a flood of 30-day trials kicking in. Right, last one. Implement a lean approach to operations. Now, lean was established by Toyota, okay? And there's a book out there called The Toyota Way, okay? And 14 Management Principles by a guy by the name of Jeffrey K. Leica. Now, that is probably the only audiobook that I have a hard time listening to. Now, it is 14 hours long, 12 or 14 hours. It's brutal. Like, I think I'm a quarter of the way or third of the way through, and I've still got 8 hours to go. So but the lean it's a mindset. Okay. Now I might have made reference in the past to running a man short. Running a man short is a cute philosophy. However, the reason you can run a man short is because you can actually execute efficiently. So you're saying, I'm going to get the job done without that guy. So I'm going to save myself 50 grand a year, and we're still going to get through the tasks that need to be done. The only way you're going to do that, you can't do that if you're sloppy. You know, you've got to be meticulous in your approach. And so, you know, I've worked with carpenters that are a friggin' mess. You know, that's the bizarrest thing. When I said that, I had this visual picture And I hope Rhino's not listening to this, but Mark Ryan was his name, and I worked with him, and shit, it would have been early 90s, mid 90s, and he had this old HQ ute, and it just had it was lowered, so, and it had these not mags, what do you call them? I'll come back to me. Anyway, it was lowered HQ, and he'd pile these tools in the back of it, so the arse would sit down, and you jump in the ute, and it would be a freaking mess, and then I mean, you could count how many times per year that he would shave on one end, and it was just a grub, and he didn't do a particularly nice job either. And so, you know, I look at that and I think there was no lean mindset. He wasn't about systemizing, whereas for me, in a super weird way, even when you go into my office, you know, I like to have everything on my desk to be organized. I've got to be able to know where it is as a moment's notice. And of course, the same thing was when I'd put a nail bag on. Like, I had the same configuration for 2 decades. It was like something I got comfortable with. That's how I like it run. And so, you know, I think when we're talking about running lean, a lot of that comes down to organization. You've just got to know what's going on. Now, read the book, because it is, like I said, a 12 or 14-hour book. And I just talked about this, I think, just now or just on the last episode. What I'm trying to break through is in your mind, because it doesn't just happen over there without you instigating. See, ideas are shit, execution's the game. And so, you know, when we're trying to sort of change our world, it all starts with, you know, what's happening in our brain. And, mate, the psychology of a builder, it's just, guys, you've got to start thinking different. I think that's what it comes down to, especially when we're talking about implementing a lean approach. You are not going to do it because I told you to do it. You're going to do it because you understand the value that it brings you in your business and your lifestyle if you do implement it. And see, that is it. That's why I sit here and I just speak freely, because I'm not trying to change your mind, because nothing I can say can. What I can do is present a different way of thinking, and then it's up to you to either embrace that and implement that and execute off the back of that or not. But if you don't catch, I guess what's important to me, I've got to make the delivery bang on. So it does something to your soul. You go, right. And it's not easy, because if it was easy, you'd already know how to do it. So if you're not doing it, then it's going to be hard to implement, because it's different. And change takes like 30 days or something. You do something for 30 days, it becomes a habit. Great. Well, there we go. So we want to eliminate waste. Oh, you know, who was I don't know if I said this on a podcast too. Guys that do, and we'll cover this next month, guys that do estimate, if you're doing estimates right now and you put big chunky line items in, that's lazy estimating. You don't know what the flock is up. Like, just don't go to contract if you've got, like, I can do a job for, say, that might be worth 40 grand, right? Little job. It'll still have 80 line items. You know, I can't tell you, the categories or the groups will depend on, you know, the type of project that it is. But nonetheless, I am very micro in breaking all that down. And the reason is because I want to eliminate waste. I want to make sure that I've accounted for everything and it's appropriate. Whatever I've accounted for, it's an appropriate level. If I go in there and just bang one vague line item for gyprock or drywall and I'm going to make it 15 grand, nobody frigging knows what's going on inside of that, because I've got guys that have got to hang it. I've got guys that have got to mud and tape it or set it. And I've got guys that have got to sand it. And then we've got to do a pre-paint, you know, like it's just, and then all of that's got materials and labor built into it, plus some delivery. So you really, you know, when I think about it, my drywall group can actually be 3 categories inside of drywall category, and it will be up to 4 to 6 line items, give or take, inside of each of those subcategories, those subgroups. So when we're talking about eliminating waste and optimizing your operations, see, because here's the thing, you know, this is something that I've, you know, struggled with for the last little bit. It's like I'm trying to maximize profit, but I'm also trying to win jobs. When I maximize profit, sometimes I don't win jobs because all of a sudden the price is up here. But I might have made reference. There was one particular job that I didn't talk about money. I liked the client, I liked the job, but I didn't talk about money, and that bit me in the ass. I think I said that in the last episode or two. And so, you know, what we have to do is, if I am running a lean approach inside my estimating process, then what I'm actually doing is I can ensure that for the duration of the project, I'm making enough per day to cover my expenses and arrive at a 10% net profit, let's say. Okay. So how we do that, we've got to have that lean approach, because when we get on site, you can't be extravagant. You can't just be willy-nilly in your ordering of materials. And I think I cover that in my notes down here. So you want to focus on reducing downtime on the job, by better coordination of subcontractors, because nothing worse than getting an electrician that's got to come back because you didn't coordinate properly or you didn't communicate properly, and then the sparky's like, well, I've got to come back again, and so he's going to ding you for another call-out fee or whatever. Managing material deliveries. I've seen times where there's been material orders, and I'm like, why is that shit here already? Why is that here now? Because I know it's going to sit there for a month. That was reckless. That was a waste of time, waste of money, because you know what? Especially if it's anything that can be affected, like a natural product, whether it's studs, bottom plate, top plates, or whether it's, trim inside and it's going to get walked over and damaged, and then my painter's got to do like that. Like, you've got to be able to understand that if you do something and you make a mistake, it's going to cost you money, okay? So we want to obviously manage the material deliveries efficiently, and avoid unnecessary trips or reworks. And our team are notorious. I've heard it more than once. Oh, well, my guys go to friggin' Home Depot 3 times a day. I'm just like, mate, that is not the business that I would run, okay? They're banned. I don't care. You're not doing it. Figure out some other way, something else to do. But you're not wasting time putting your ass in the seat of that truck and driving backwards and forwards. No, you're not doing it. See, that is the opposite of lean. Okay, you come up with a very structured approach to the procurement of materials. Now, the reason your boys do that is because you're not organized in the office, metaphorically speaking, in your office. You are not, okay? Because two things. One, your ordering was pretty ordinary. B, you haven't got an acceptable level of inventory or extra that was contingent, that was there just in case. And so they're busy, or the communication is crap. They go and buy 3 tubes of caulking, and you like, mate, what? I thought you had a box. You told me last week you had a box of 24. Oh, well, like that. And then we can start talking about ordering systems whereby you'll have QR codes that are, in laminated sheets that are on the wall of the trailer, that they can just hit that QR code and it goes straight to a Google form, and they can fill it out and go, I need this, bang, That way it doesn't get lost in text messages, and I think JobTread probably is going to go a long ways to helping us do that. So, I think coordinating subcontractors is one thing, but also recruiting subcontractors. And I'll give you a little story. Something happened to me just recently, and it had to do with an architect, and not a big architect, but, one that was reputable, right? And I had a conversation with that individual on a Tuesday, and then what I did is it was about, okay, this is the project that we've got. This is what's going to be needed in the discovery phase. You're going to need to talk to the city or council if you're in Australia, New Zealand. You're going to need to figure out, whether we can build this the way the client wants it built. And, this is the timeline. We've got to start it, 3/4 of the way or just after summer. But we've got about 3 months to do all the design. And, she would go through the discovery phase, then the concept phase, and then the construction drawing final stage. And then basically that would be the complete scope. And it's like, yep, that's a good timeline. Yep, we can fit you in. So I then worked, which is not completely unusual, but I worked on that on the weekend, spent a lot of time Sunday producing communications with the client out of JobTread. I then put together budgets for all of the design services, architects, engineers, geotechs, surveyors, interior designers, and then, of course, the city or council where we get the building application and the permit. And then I basically generated out of the budget for architecture, I generated a purchase order for her for discovery, for the discovery phase. I thought, well, if we can't build it, there's no point in giving you a purchase order for the concept or the construction phase. We'd probably bundle those two together, or I'd send them on the one order, because then we know we're committed. However, so that was all dispatched. That was done before I went home on Sunday afternoon. 10 o'clock Monday morning, all of a sudden she's emailing me going, unfortunately, I've had 2 previous clients come in and, they're repeat customers, so I'm going to serve them and basically all the best with your project. Okay. Now, I sent her back an email, let her know that I was disappointed, but I respect the fact that she can, triage and prioritize work at her, leisure. Now, the thing that says to me is she will never get another shot. I don't care if she's the last architect on God's green earth. And the reason is because my operation cannot be held to ransom by someone that's got a limited capacity. So what I needed to do was, so we don't want to, I asked all the right questions. Everything was going along just fine. It just so happened that she made it clear that she wasn't able to work with me based on that. So that tells me there's a limiting factor. Now, I don't think I recruited badly. I think, she'd worked with my Smith & Sons guys before. But she made a choice to go down that rabbit hole. Unfortunately, so what I did is I got that email at 10:30. I responded pretty quickly, maybe in half an hour. And at the same time, I picked up another meeting and I had a lunchtime appointment 2 hours later and secured another architect. Okay. And was a little bit more, blunt. It's like, don't let me down, because if you do, I'm not going to be very happy. And he's committed. Like, okay, cool. So we've got a meeting with the client on Zoom. And he's going to be there, I'm going to be there, client's going to be there, and we're going to talk about it. But what I'm getting at is that you don't necessarily let that person off, not because they're a bad person, not because of what they did. What it does is it presents a vulnerability to your business. So what that doesn't help you with is that if you're always down the pecking order now, like I am, clearly, then you're never going to get up there. And then there'll come a day where she might come to me and go, have you got any work? Now, that may or may not happen, but it's irrelevant because it's like I know that she can only do one job at a time, clearly, rather than working on several. So just to give you a bit of an insight, don't underestimate good recruitment processes, okay? And like I said, like the way I dealt with that, yes, I was pissed because I just worked and I'm like, I've committed to the client, so I had a hole to fill and I wasn't happy about it. But instead of, once you get over your little dummy spit and, all that sort of jazz, you just got to go, right, what have I got? And there were some options. And I executed, and within 2 hours, I'd got that hole filled. That's what I do. I don't go, that's a little bit of an inconvenience. I'll worry about that later, and then I'll lose a whole week, right? I don't do that. I immediately got to fill it because I stay in control, and I love being out front. So it's fine, whatever, exit stage left, get somebody else. Good to go. Now, to give you a bit of an idea, when we talk about systems, like I'm a franchisor, okay? 2 levels within that franchise business. One is obviously corporate office, at the bottom, and then we sell master franchises. Maybe I could do a little pitch for a master franchise. For the sake of time, I won't. And then, the master franchises support or sell and recruit general contractors on behalf of corporate office here. And that's pretty much how we build national brands. Now, to let you guys know what I've got here, and you won't be able to see this in the podcast, but what I've got here is I've got a manual, and it's got identifying the right type of person to be a sub-franchise, and then halfway through this manual, it's got identifying the right type of person to be a master franchise. So when I talk about documenting systems, it has to be in writing. Otherwise, your head is not really a long-term storage or a mid to long-term storage device, okay? And once the business gets big enough, you're not going to be able to store it all mid-term, long-term, or short-term. It's just not going to happen. So everything's got to be documented. It's got to be, digital and manual if you think that's the case. And so, if I was talking to you about a franchise, there's what things that I'm looking for, that I know after my experience in the last 6 years of franchising or 7 years, there's certain levels of personal qualities that I need you to have, and there's professional attributes that I also need to have, and they're all documented, in a couple of pages inside of this. And so what that does is we've got to move a lot of dirt, you and I, to find good clients. And so if you haven't got something similar that says, what is the right type of client for me? Someone that doesn't use my software, I don't do business with them. If you don't communicate on my JobTread software, that's where I deal with the majority of my business, if not all of my business. And therefore, if you're not going to play that game, then you're out. And that's that. See, it's nothing personal. It's just I know that it limits my ability. Why will I do that person any favors and then everyone else has got to comply, but that person doesn't? I don't care how special you think you are. It's my business and you're going to play by my rules or you're not going to play with me at all. The end. Okay, and then really at the conclusion of that, as a franchisee growth pathway. So we've got this 1 to 5 years where we put this growth pathway because we know that we're dealing with individuals. And then, of course, the master franchise has got a development workflow. So, that's just to give you a quick example as to what is going on, inside of my head when it comes to developing business. Because at the end of the day, if I'm not in control of my business from a system standpoint in a granular format, that is going to create a lot of hardship for me going forward because I'll be out of control. Okay, so let's round up. I mean, we've been going long enough. Let's get this. If you are doing everything right, okay, and here's what I'm going to finish on. If you go, Max, I don't have a war chest. I don't have, the minimum funds that I need, and I'm having trouble managing my overheads, i.e. I can't trim. I've streamlined as best I can, and listen to this, and then I'm running it as lean as I can. So I'm streamlining, I'm running things lean, this old man short thing, and I've trimmed where I can, but I'm still in a deficit each month. Okay, what that's alluding to, guys and gals, is that there's other inherent issues within your business process, and they will be lead generation, sales process, project costing and estimating, and project delivery. And we're not going to get into that today, but if that's you and you're nodding your head going, mate, I've analysed it, there's nothing else I can trim, I've streamlined as much as I can, I'm running solo, right? And I've grabbed the missus and she's working her ass off for nothing or whatever the case may be, and you're running things as lean as you can on a job site and you still have issues, then it's gonna be in one or more or all of those parts of your business as it relates to sales, project costing and estimating, delivery, and lead generation. That is going to, and that's the deal. When I'm talking to guys, I'm like, so what are you doing for lead gen? So how are you estimating? So how long between drinks on, progress payments with you? And why does it take you so long to go from frame stage to drywall stage? Guys, it's just, you've got to do your own audit. You've got to put your big boy pants on and you've got to be real with yourself, because there's only so much I can do on this podcast. I'd love to do it all for you, but mate, I cannot do that. And so, you've got to be able to sort of manage your business. That's really and this is why you as a technician, you've got to go and, get your head straight as far as you spend 70% of your time on the building site and you disregard the other parts of your business. It's any wonder that you're still, surviving. So, have a long, hard think about that. That's a bit of a heavy way to finish, but, it's real, just real talk. I just see it more and more now, and we've got to get better. We've got to get smarter. We've got to get more efficient. And I think we've got to have more courage, because, I'll talk about this next time, but, for me to go and see a client, I like the client, like the job, but I didn't talk about money and it bit me in the ass. And then I did a phone call with a client out of Calgary, so we're on the West Coast, and I just chatted with her for an hour and talked about the project. And then I talked about, I like the project and I like the client. I swore to God I'm not walking out of there until I talked about money, and I didn't. And I got a bit of a head nod. And I'm like, okay, that is the remarkable difference. See, what that took is, I impressed her with all of the stuff going, leading up to that moment in time. But it was a physical maneuver. I had to go and say, right. And whilst we're talking, I'm thinking about numbers. I'm like, all right, to do that kitchen, to do that bathroom, to do that master bathroom. Right, and then when I started to talk to her about it, so we just had really long conversation about the design, and it was time for me to talk about money. That worked out pretty positively. So stay tuned, but we'll see what happens. But it takes courage. And I would encourage you to get outside your comfort zone. And the thing is, what we're actually saying is, we're not afraid of getting out of our comfort zone. We're afraid of getting out of our comfort zone and not knowing what we're doing and cocking it up and feeling embarrassed. And there is no way to avoid that. I am sorry. You think you can learn it so well that you can just go on stage and carve out an Angus Young, shook me all night long solo and not mess up a few notes. Mate, we've all been there, we've all done it. And we just, by repetition is the mother of learning. So what you don't want to do is go outside your comfort zone, try it on, mess it up, cry me a river, jump back into your comfort zone and never go back there. Stay out of your comfort zone. Push the envelope. That's why it takes courage, and you can do it. Go and build a kick-ass business, and I'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.